I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend. The words cut through the ambient murmur of the grand ballroom like a blade through silk, and Lumi's fingers stilled above the keys of the Steinway. She looked up. The man standing beside the piano was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and he looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. His tie was perfectly knotted, his jaw was clean-shaven, his posture was impeccable, but his eyes were a wreck. Dark circles. Something frayed at the edges. 10 minutes, he added, his voice low and urgent, pitched for her ears alone. That's all I need. My grandmother is circling like a shark, my aunt just asked me when I plan to settle down for the 4th time this evening, and my cousin is, he broke off, his gaze flicking over her shoulder. Look, I'll triple your fee. Just, please. Help me. Lumi looked at him for a long moment. She had been hired as the evening's pianist. Standard corporate gala fare, Chopin preludes, some Debussy, a few standards to keep the champagne flowing. She'd played in rooms like this before. Grand chandeliers dripping crystal, waiters with white gloves, old money and new money swirling in expensive perfume and hollow conversation. She'd learned to fade into the wallpaper, to become part of the acoustic ambience, to be seen and not heard. This man was asking her to step out from behind the piano and become something else entirely. I'm not an actress, she said. You don't have to be. Just stand next to me. Smile occasionally. Deflect questions. His hand tightened on the piano's rim, and she noticed his knuckles were white. Please. There was something in his voice. Not desperation, exactly, this man was too controlled for desperation, but something close. A man accustomed to command, reduced to asking. She saw the shape of his exhaustion, the careful architecture of a public face that was beginning to crack. She studied him. The cut of his jaw. The way his shoulders sat under his jacket, too rigid, like he was braced for impact. The faint pulse at his temple. If I do this, she said, I'm not a cheap date. I said I'd triple your fee. You said that before I agreed. That was the opening offer. Now you're negotiating against yourself. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of surprise, then, was that amusement? It was gone before she could be sure. Name your price, he said. She closed the lid over the piano keys. 4 times my standard rate. And I want it in cash. Up front. Done. And you owe me one real answer to one real question. His brows drew together. What question? I'll decide later. She stood, smoothing down the simple black dress she'd worn. You've got 10 minutes. Use them wisely. Lumi had come to the gala because the pay was good and the gig was simple. A 4-hour block of classical piano in the corner of a ballroom that smelled like old money and expensive flowers. She'd done dozens of these jobs. Corporate anniversaries, charity fundraisers, the occasional wedding where the bride's family wanted something cultured to impress the guests. She was good at disappearing. That was the thing about playing piano in rooms like this. People heard the music but they didn't see the musician. She was background noise with a pulse. A human jukebox. She'd learned long ago that the rich and powerful didn't notice the help unless something went wrong. But this man had noticed her. He'd walked straight across the ballroom floor, threading through clusters of tuxedoed men and jewel-draped women, and fixed his attention on her like she was the only person in the room worth speaking to. She wondered what that felt like. To have everyone watch you, all the time. To never be background noise. She'd been curious enough to say yes. Also, for times her usual fee was nothing to sneeze at. Just follow my lead, Elias said, offering her his arm as they walked back toward the main body of the ballroom. If someone asks how we met, say, the truth, Lumi said smoothly. That I was playing piano and you couldn't keep your eyes off me. It's flattering without being specific. They'll fill in the gaps themselves. He glanced down at her, surprise flickering again. You've done this before. Not this exactly. But I've been to cocktail parties. She slid her hand into the crook of his arm, her touch light and proper. You have to relax your shoulders. You look like you're about to be shot. I might be. Then at least die with good posture. He made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been a cough. She couldn't tell. But his shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch, and she counted that as a small victory. The ballroom was a sea of faces, each one turned toward them with varying degrees of curiosity. She felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing, like walking into a warm room after being in the cold. Here we go, Elias murmured. An older woman in a forest green gown approached with the determined glide of a warship. Her silver hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, and her eyes, sharp, pale, intelligent, fixed on Lumi with laser intensity. Elias, the woman said. You've been hiding from me. Grandmother. He kissed her cheek with the practiced ease of someone who'd been doing it his whole life. I've been attending to business. You know how it is. Business. The old woman's eyes swept over Lumi, taking in everything from her modest black dress to her unadorned neck to the way she stood just slightly back from Elias, not clinging but present. And who is this? Lumi felt Elias's arm tense beneath her hand. Grandmother, he said, this is Lumi. She's a friend of Elias's, Lumi interrupted smoothly, stepping forward and extending her hand. We've known each other for a while now, actually. I'm the pianist you hired for the evening. The old woman's eyebrows rose. The pianist. Tonight's pianist, Lumi agreed. Though Elias and I met before that. I usually play at the Waldorf on weekends, and he came in with a client a few months ago. I was playing Satie, and she looked up at Elias, her expression warm and conspiratorial. Actually, you tell it. I'll probably embellish. Elias blinked, just for a fraction of a second. Then he recovered, the muscles in his arm relaxing beneath her hand. I'd come in for a business dinner, he said, his voice settling into a steadier register. The client was boring me to tears, and then this woman started playing Gymnopédie No. 1 and I couldn't focus on anything else. I asked the maitre d' for her name. He wouldn't give it to me. So I had to keep coming back until I figured out her schedule. How romantic, his grandmother said, though her tone was unreadable. It was persistent, Lumi corrected lightly. There's a difference. Romantic is when you send flowers. Persistent is when you show up at the bar on my night off and pretend to be surprised to see me. Elias made a sound that might have been amusement, and even his grandmother's lips twitched. And how long have you been seeing each other? The old woman asked. 3 months, Lumi said, just as Elias said, since spring. They looked at each other. Lumi smiled, easy and unflustered. Spring, she agreed. The start of something, anyway. I'm not sure we've actually named it yet. Men can be so reluctant. Elias's grandmother laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Elias? Reluctant? That would be a first. He's always been decisive. Sometimes to a fault. He's been very decisive about dinner reservations, Lumi offered. And very sweet about making sure I get home safely after late rehearsals. I suppose that's its own kind of declaration. The old woman studied her for a long moment. Lumi kept her expression warm but undemanding, the face of a woman who was content to be in the moment, asking nothing more. Elias, his grandmother said finally, you've never brought anyone to meet me before. Maybe I was waiting for the right one, Elias said. The old woman's gaze flickered to him, then back to Lumi. Something passed across her face, not quite suspicion, but a sharpened awareness. You're clever, she said to Lumi. Clever people are dangerous. Only when they're given no other choice, Lumi replied. Something flickered across the old woman's face. Recognition, maybe. Or warning. My husband used to say that, she said quietly. Before he died. He always said clever women were the only ones worth trusting. She held Lumi's gaze a beat longer than necessary. Then she glided away, merging back into the flow of departing guests. She knows, Lumi murmured, her smile fixed in place. She knows something's off. How can you tell? Because she didn't ask where I grew up, what I do for a living, or whether we'd had the where is this going conversation. A grandmother who's genuinely curious about the new girlfriend asks those things. A grandmother whose suspicious focuses on the story. Lumi paused, a faint frown crossing her face. And because she looked at me like she'd seen my face before. Elias went still. What do you mean? I mean your grandmother knows something about me. And I don't know what it is yet. Lumi tightened her hand on his arm. But that's a problem for another time. Right now, we have a more immediate concern. Which is? Your assistant. The one in the gray suit. She nodded subtly toward the staircase. He's been hovering there for the last 10 minutes, and his face is the color of unset concrete. He looks like a man who's about to lose his job or his mind. Possibly both. Elias turned, and Lumi watched his expression shift from curiosity to recognition to something harder. Excuse me, he said, already moving toward the assistant. I need to, I'm coming with you. Lumi kept pace beside him, her hand still resting on his arm. Whatever's about to happen, I'm part of your story now. Walking away makes it a story. Walking toward it makes it a performance. You're manipulating me, he said, but there was no heat in it. I'm helping you. There's a difference. You keep saying that. Because you keep misidentifying basic facts. The assistant's name was Markham, and he was sweating through his shirt. Sir, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a problem. Elias steered them toward a quieter alcove, away from the main flow of the ballroom. What kind of problem? Your uncle's document. Markham was pale now, his eyes darting around like he expected to be overheard. The one from the Zurich account. It's gone missing from the secure file room. Elias's jaw tightened. I thought you confirmed it was there this morning. I did. I signed the log myself. But when I went to retrieve it 10 minutes ago, Markham swallowed hard. It wasn't there. The log is signed. That's a chain of custody issue. Yes, sir. I understand that. But that's not the worst part. Markham leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely audible. The security footage from the corridor outside the file room shows only one person entering between my check-in and now. Who? Your uncle, sir. Marcus. Elias went very still. Lumi felt the tension radiate through his arm like a current. Did you say anything to him? Elias asked. Give any indication the document was missing? No, sir. I came straight to you. Good. Go back to the file room. Stay there. If anyone asks, you're double-checking the inventory for tomorrow's meeting. Markham nodded and disappeared back into the crowd. Elias turned to Lumi, his face a careful mask. I need to check something in my bedroom. The missing document? No. Something else. He met her eyes. Something I should have checked 3 hours ago. She understood immediately. You think he planted something in your private space. I think my uncle doesn't make moves without a reason. If he took the document, it's because he wants me to know he took it. Which means he's already laid the trap. Then let's go see what he left you. The hallway leading to Elias's private quarters was long and paneled in dark wood, the kind of hallway that belonged to an older building that had been updated just enough to pass as modern without sacrificing its bones. The carpet was deep burgundy, so thick that their footsteps made almost no sound. You're good at this, Elias said quietly. Walking into disaster like it's just another room. I've had practice. What kind of practice? Lumi was quiet for a moment. They were passing beneath a crystal sconce, and the light threw shadows across his face. The kind where you learn to read the room before you enter it, she said. Where I grew up, the difference between walking into a celebration and walking into a confrontation was usually just a matter of who was standing where. You learn to watch. You learn to listen. You learn that people tell you everything you need to know in the first 3 seconds of seeing you. And what did you see in me? Elias asked. The first 3 seconds. She glanced at him. A man who was used to being in control but had forgotten what that felt like. He absorbed that. That's surprisingly accurate, he said. I told you. I observe. And what do you see now? She considered the question. The hallway stretched before them, empty and expectant. Somewhere in the distance, the muffled sound of the party continued, like a world happening on the other side of glass. I see a man who's about to walk into his bedroom and find something he doesn't want to see, she said. And I see someone who's not sure if he wants to face it alone. Elias stopped walking. The hallway was silent except for the distant murmur of the party, muffled as if from another world. A single sconce flickered somewhere behind them, and Lumi noticed the shadow it cast across his face, the way it hollowed out his cheeks, made him look older. How do you do that? He asked. Do what? See through people. You've known me 3 hours, and you already know more about me than people I've known for years. She held his gaze. I was raised by people who played games. Not necessarily bad people, just people who always said one thing and meant another. People who smiled when they were angry and cried when they were happy. I learned early that words are cheap. She reached up and adjusted his tie, a small, intimate gesture. It's what people do when they think no one's watching that matters. She smoothed the silk, her fingers lingering a moment longer than necessary. And right now, no one's watching us except each other. So here's what I see, a man who's been carrying something heavy for a long time, and who's about to let someone else carry it with him for the first time. You asked me to be your girlfriend. But that's not really what you're asking, is it? He was silent for a long moment. Then, what am I asking? She met his eyes. You're asking me to be the person who stays in the room when everyone else leaves. He said nothing to that. But something shifted in his expression, a crack in the careful architecture of his control. There's a safe in my bedroom, he said finally. Behind a painting. I need to check what's inside. I figured. How? Because when your assistant told you the document was missing, you didn't look worried. You looked angry. That's the look of a man who's had his prediction confirmed. She started walking again, and after a moment, he fell into step beside her. So. Safe behind a painting. That's either very old school or very obvious. It's both. He was watching her differently now, his eyes sharp with something that might have been admiration. You don't miss much. Not much. She paused at the bedroom door. Ready? No. Good. That's usually when I do my best work. The bedroom was unexpected. Lumi had been in luxury suites before, the kind that came with minibars and marble bathrooms and views that cost extra. But this room was different. It was large, yes, with a fireplace that looked functional and a bed that probably cost more than her car, but it was also inhabited. There were books on the nightstand. A jacket draped over a chair. Her gaze drifted to the photograph on the dresser. A woman in her late 30s, laughing at something off camera, her hand resting on the shoulder of a young boy who was clearly Elias. You have her smile, Lumi said softly. Elias looked up, something flickering across his face. I don't remember it anymore. Then maybe you should start. The words hung in the air between them. Elias stood frozen for a moment, and she watched something complicated move across his features. Grief, yes, but something else too. The slow loosening of a knot he'd been holding for too long. My father, he said eventually, his voice quieter than she'd heard it, kept this room exactly as it was when she died. He never changed a thing. And after he died? I couldn't bring myself to change it either. He looked around the room, and for a moment his guard was completely gone. Sometimes I think grief is just the habit of pretending people are still here. Lumi didn't answer that. There was nothing to say that wouldn't trivialize it. She watched him cross to the painting on the far wall, a landscape, something generic that probably came with the furniture, and press a corner of the frame. There was a soft click, and the painting swung outward to reveal a safe. State of the art, Elias said, pulling it open. Biometric lock. Dual key system. Tamper detection. I'd be impressed if I hadn't installed it myself. Lumi watched as he extracted a folder from the safe's interior. He opened it, scanned the contents, and then, very slowly, his face went white. No, he said. No, what? The document. It's here. It's been here this whole time. He was flipping through pages, his movements increasingly frantic. I checked the safe this morning and it wasn't here. Someone's been in here. Someone put this here. Lumi stepped closer, her eyes scanning the papers he was rifling through. Legal documents, mostly. Corporate paperwork. But something caught her eye, a corner of an envelope, tucked into the back of the folder, half hidden beneath a sheaf of annual reports. Elias, she said quietly. That envelope. The one at the back. He pulled it out. It was thin, ordinary, the kind of envelope that could hold anything from a birthday card to a severance notice. But when Elias opened it, his face went from white to something worse. What is it? Lumi asked. He didn't answer. He just stared at the slip of paper inside, his hands trembling. Lumi moved around him to look. It was a bank slip. Swiss bank. With an account number and a date, last Tuesday. And the name of the account holder, written in neat, careful print. Marcus. She read the name once. Twice. Then she set the slip down on the bed and pressed her fingertips to her temples, a rare gesture of real disquiet. Elias, she said quietly, do you know what it means when a man plants evidence in your private safe? He looked up, his eyes dark. That he's trying to frame me. No. She held his gaze. It means he's already won, and he's just waiting for you to realize it. They sat on the edge of his bed, the papers spread out between them like a confession. Elias told her everything. The family business, the succession battle, the careful maneuvering between his uncle Marcus and his grandmother's generation. The way his father had died, suddenly, unexpectedly, leaving Elias to inherit a company that was already bleeding money. The way Marcus had been eroding his authority from within, slowly, carefully, one small embezzlement at a time. He's not just stealing from the company, Elias said. He's building a case to have me removed. Claiming I'm unfit. Incompetent. That the stress of my father's death made me unstable. He's setting you up, Lumi said. He's succeeding. Elias gestured at the bank slip. This isn't the first document I've found. There have been others. But this one is different. Why? Because this one was in my safe. Which means Marcus has access to my secure spaces. He looked up, his eyes dark. Which means he's been inside my private quarters. Which means he knows about you. Lumi felt a cold thread of unease curl around her spine. The unstable situation, she murmured. Your uncle was telling someone I'm the proof of your instability. I think so, yes. Why? Why would they think that? Elias was quiet for a long moment. Because my father was devoted to my mother, he said eventually. She was the center of his world. When she died, he fell apart. The company nearly collapsed. He spent the last years of his life trying to rebuild what he'd lost, but he never got it back. He met her eyes. Marcus knows that. He knows that the men in my family have a weakness for the women they love. He thinks you're my weakness. Lumi absorbed this. Am I? She asked. I don't know yet. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What I know is that when Marcus sees you, he sees a potential weapon. And when Marcus sees a potential weapon, he doesn't let it stay in the hands of his enemies. He's going to try to use me against you. Worse. He's going to try to destroy you. Lumi thought about that. Thought about the pleasant smile on Marcus's face, the way his eyes had slid over her like oil on water. The way he'd looked at her like she was a problem to be solved. Then we have a problem, she said. We have several problems, Elias agreed. No. We have one problem. She picked up the bank slip, studying it in the amber light of the bedside lamp. Marcus planted this document in your safe. He wanted you to find it. He wanted you to panic. Because panic makes people do stupid things. Elias frowned. How do you know it's a plant? Because he left it in the open. She gestured at the safe. This is a state-of-the-art security system, and he left the document in plain sight, in a folder you'd be almost certain to check. He's not trying to hide anything. He's trying to manipulate you. For what purpose? I don't know yet. She set the slip down carefully, precisely. But I know what I'd do if I were him. What? I'd watch. I'd wait. I'd see how you reacted. And then I'd use that reaction to build my case. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. Elias, your uncle is playing a game. He's been playing it for years. The problem is, you've been responding to his moves instead of making your own. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's very difficult. She leaned forward slightly. But it's also not insurmountable. Lumi stood and walked to the window. The city spread out below them, a grid of lights and shadows, and she pressed her palm flat against the glass. The coolness of it grounded her. Elias, she said without turning, does your uncle expect you to be unstable? I think he's counting on it. Then we make you boring. She turned back to face him. We make you so stable, so settled, so completely unremarkable that his entire narrative falls apart. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. And how exactly do we do that? She crossed the room, stopped a foot away from him. We give him a relationship so normal, so forgettable, that he stops looking for cracks. A relationship. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you're suggesting we keep pretending. I'm suggesting we give him exactly what he doesn't expect to see, a couple who are boringly, uninterestingly, thoroughly average. No drama. No instability. Just two people who like each other and want to be together. And what does that look like? It looks like me coming to your office for lunch. Like you walking me to my car after every event. Like casual touches. Consistent phone calls. She watched him. It looks like dating. Elias was watching her with an unreadable expression. That sounds like dating. It sounds like an arrangement. Is that what you want? She met his eyes. I want to solve the problem. What I want outside of that isn't relevant. Lumi. He said her name slowly, like he was testing how it felt on his tongue. If we do this, if we pretend to be a couple, what happens when it's over? When Marcus is dealt with and there's no more reason to keep up the act? She was quiet for a long moment. I'll go back to playing piano, she said. I'll fade back into the wallpaper. That's what I do. And if I don't want you to fade? The question hung between them, and Lumi felt something shift in her chest, a small, unfamiliar ache. No one had ever asked her that before. She didn't answer. There was nothing to say that wouldn't change everything. Instead, she turned back to the window. We need to figure out our next move, she said, her voice deliberately steady. Marcus thinks he has the upper hand. He thinks he's got proof of your instability, proof of your weakness. But he's left us something we can use. What? His impatience. He planted the evidence too early. He's counting on you to react, to get angry, to make mistakes. But we're not going to do that. What are we going to do? She turned back to face him. We're going to play the long game. We're going to be so stable, so boring, so uninteresting that Marcus can't find a single crack in our story. And when he digs deeper, then we'll have a story that holds up. She moved toward the door. But first, we need to get out of this room. We've been in here too long. People will start talking. Let them. Lumi stopped, looking back at him. I don't think you understand, she said. Your uncle has already planted the seed of instability. If we emerge from this room looking anywhere but perfectly together, he'll use it against you. Then what do you suggest? She took a breath. For a moment, she didn't move. She could feel the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm, faster than she'd expected. She crossed the room and closed the distance between them, her hand coming up to press against his chest. Trust me, she said. Just trust me. Lumi. His voice dropped to something quieter, and she felt it resonate through her palm. You don't have to, I know. She kissed him before she could talk herself out of it. It wasn't the kiss she'd planned. She'd meant it to be necessary, a performance for an audience that wasn't even there. She'd meant it to be clean, transactional, the kind of kiss that said this is a transaction and nothing more. But the moment her lips touched his, something changed. It was softer than she'd intended. Slower. The kind of kiss that revealed more than it concealed. His hand came up to cradle her jaw, and she felt the calluses on his fingertips, an unexpected detail, a man who did more than just sign documents. She hadn't meant to notice that. She hadn't meant to notice anything at all. But she noticed everything, the way his thumb traced the line of her cheek, the way his breath caught when she leaned closer, the way the rest of the room seemed to recede into background noise. When she pulled back, they were both slightly breathless. That, Elias said, his voice low, wasn't necessary. I know. Then why did you do it? She looked at him, and for a moment she saw him not as the man in the expensive suit, the man with the family secrets and the desperate request, but as someone else entirely. Someone who was tired. Someone who needed to be seen. Because I wanted to, she said. And I don't think I've done anything I wanted to do for a very long time. She stepped back, her hand dropping from his chest. Her fingertips still tingled with the imprint of his heartbeat. We should go, she said. Before someone comes looking. The ballroom was still alive when they emerged, but the energy had shifted. People were starting to leave, the older crowd drifting toward the doors while the younger set lingered over cocktails and small talk. Elias's grandmother intercepted them before they could reach the exit. You've been gone a long time, she said, and there was something knowing in her eyes. We had some things to discuss, Elias said smoothly. Lumi had some questions about the family business. Did she? I'm fascinated by legacy, Lumi offered. The way families build something that lasts beyond them. It's admirable, really. The old woman's eyes sharpened. Is that what you think we're building? She asked. A legacy? I think you're building a future, Lumi said. Whether you call it a legacy or something else is just semantics. The grandmother studied her for a long moment. Then she leaned in, her voice dropping to a murmur meant for Lumi's ears alone. You remind me of myself, she said. Which is why I'm going to warn you, my grandson's family has a way of consuming the people who try to help them. Lumi met her gaze without flinching. Then I'll have to make sure I'm not easy to consume, she said. The old woman smiled, a thin, sharp smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I hope you're as clever as you seem, she said. Because you're going to need it. She drifted away, and Lumi watched her go. She knows something, Lumi murmured to Elias as she watched her grandmother disappear into the crowd. Not about tonight. Something else. Something she hasn't told you. Like what? I don't know yet. Lumi's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. But she's not worried about you. She's worried about me. That's interesting. It might be nothing. It's never nothing. Lumi turned to look at him, her gaze sharp. Your grandmother has been watching this whole situation unfold with clearer eyes than anyone else in the room. She knows something's coming. And she's already decided which side she's on. What side is that? Ours. Lumi looked back toward the departing figure. She hasn't said it yet. But she will. When it matters. The city was quiet as they walked to her car, the late-night traffic reduced to the occasional taxi and the distant hum of the elevated train. Elias's building rose behind them, a monument to old money and older secrets. Thank you, Elias said, as she unlocked her car door. For tonight. For all of it. You paid me, she reminded him. That's the transaction. Is that all it was? She looked at him across the roof of her car. The streetlight caught the angles of his face, the shadows beneath his eyes. I don't know, she said honestly. I guess we'll find out. She got into the car and started the engine. Elias stepped back, his hands in his pockets. Lumi, he said, through the open window. Yes? I'll call you tomorrow. We have a game to plan. We do. And Lumi? She looked up at him. Thanks for making the music real, he said. She pulled away, the streetlights sliding across her windshield like falling stars. Tomorrow, she would figure out what came next. Tonight, she would let herself feel it, the small, dangerous bloom of something she hadn't felt in years. In the morning, when her phone buzzed at 7:30 and Elias's voice was the first thing she heard, she would tell herself it was just strategy. But tonight, driving through the empty streets with the window down and the city lights blurring past, she let herself wonder if maybe, just maybe, it wasn't. She didn't know where it would lead. She didn't know who she would be at the end of it. But for the first time in years, she wanted to find out.
Subscribe to me for more content.